Order at 6:44 p.m. Please rise, and the clerk will lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have a motion and a second that the agenda of January 9th, 2024 be approved as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Board members, questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I please have a motion and a second that the board approves the consent agenda below?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I please have a motion and a second that the treasurer's report, including the cash report, general fund cash report, the general fund revenue status report, general fund budget status report, school lunch fund cash report, and school lunch fund revenue and expense budget report for the month ending October 31st, 2023 be approved?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Okay, special reports?
We have one special report this evening. If anybody saw the agenda that went on Friday, there were two. We're going to push one due to the weather-related issues outside, but our science of reading is going to present because they said rain, snow, wind, they're not worried. They love reading. So I'll invite them up. If you could introduce yourself, and the slides are all loaded up, and the clicker is there ready for you.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to present tonight. I am Sheena Conway, the Director of Humanities.
I'm Kate Ingram. I'm a literacy specialist over at Indian Landing, and I'm also the K-12 Literacy Department Chair.
So we do feel like this presentation is pretty timely. We know we were supposed to present a few months back, but we think this is perfect timing. I'm sure many of you saw Governor Hochul's message last week where she's proposing legislation and for funding related to the science of reading. So millions of dollars are going to be allocated for this to teachers to be trained. That includes higher education institutions and their teacher preparatory programs. We also thought it was interesting that by 2025, all districts will need to certify that they're aligned with the science of reading, their instructional practices, their programming, their professional learning. So in Penfield, we just really feel affirmed by this. This is work that we started back in 2019. We've continued this work. We've trained our teachers in letters, so that's language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, and we've also made programmatic shifts K2 and 3-5 to make sure that we're aligned with the science of reading. So we're very excited about what the governor is proposing. So the science of reading, it's sort of become this buzzword, right? And it can be difficult to decipher exactly what it is. So we thought it made sense to start this presentation with what it is and then what it isn't. So the science of reading is a body of research. It's not new research. So it's research that's been conducted over 5 decades, actually. It is rooted in findings from various fields. So the fields are psychology, linguistics, neuroscience, and education. And the research is fascinating because it really shows us, literally in the brain, we have MRI imaging of the brain, how kids learn how to read and write. And what we've learned from this is it's not natural, it's not easy, it's cognitively taxing, and so it gives us insight into why students experience difficulty. And I think that last bullet is especially important, that we are hardwired to speak, that is natural for us. Learning to read is not. So when kids first start to read, it is frustrating, and we try to tell them it should be. It's not natural. I should also mention that when we talk about reading and equity, right, this is teaching children how to read is equity in action. This is aligned to our equity long-range plan. It's aligned to the culturally responsive sustaining framework. We hold high expectations and rigorous instruction. That is a component of the culturally responsive sustaining framework. So giving kids access to literacy, to be able to read, write, speak, to be able to advocate for themselves. We know that these tools will follow them long after they leave our school. So it's extremely important, and I just wanted to make note that we feel strongly that this is in alignment with our beliefs around equity and access. The science of reading is not a one-size-fits-all approach. We meet students where they are. So we differentiate and we determine what the child needs, and we try to meet them there with our instruction. It's not an off-the-shelf program. So the science of reading, as I mentioned, it is a body of research, but it's not a program. Now, there are programs aligned to the science of reading, and we feel strongly that we've selected some really good programs. There's always room for improvement. We've identified some gaps over the years that we need to fill in, but it is not, in fact, a program. It's not a philosophy. So it's research, it's based in science. Sometimes you'll hear people refer to it as like an ideology or a philosophy. It is not. It is concrete science that it's supported by research. In education, we often see fads and trends, and this can be very frustrating for educators because they can come and go, but this is here to stay. This is not new research. It is not exclusively phonics. That is a common misconception, too, when it comes to the science of reading, that we're just solely focused on helping get kids getting words off the page or decoding. However, that is really important. Comprehension is a component of this, but if kids can't access the words, right, and can't pull them off the page and read fluently, they're never going to be able to comprehend what they're reading, which is why we put so much emphasis in those primary grades on phonics instruction. It is not a meaning-based activity that's acquired through immersion. So I think we all learned how to read through immersion and exposure. That works for 60% of the students in our schools. The other 40% get left behind, and they essentially become functionally illiterate, which is just, we know, unacceptable. So we do not teach through immersion or exposure or guessing or context clues. Kate will walk us through how this is very explicit and structured and cumulative.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how reading is processed in the brain. So the image that you see is the left hemisphere of the brain. So this is the reading brain, and it's where we process language. We thought it was important to share this slide because you'll see the various lobes within that left hemisphere. This is where we process those various speech sounds. For example, in the frontal lobe, we have language comprehension. In the temporal lobe, we have word analysis and sound symbol connection. So lots of integral parts. And what scientists have found is that the neural connections in these pathways that are required for reading are actually not existent in an illiterate or a pre-literate brain, so like in infants, for example. So as Sheena said earlier, we know that the brain is hardwired to learn to speak, right? That comes naturally, but that the brain is not hardwired to learn to read, that really reading and spelling is man-made. So we have to teach it explicitly. We do know that there is that small percentage of individuals that do learn to read regardless of what kinds of instruction they're given. However, the majority of those students we found, and scientists have found, that there are still gaps in their learning. So they may be decoding the words, but maybe they have gaps in their spelling skills. And they really aren't truly at their potential for skilled reading. And that the majority of students really do require that explicit and systematic instruction in order to become a skilled reader. So on the next slide, another kind of technical one, but still, equally important. But this is Scarborough's reading rope, and this was developed by Dr. Hollis Scarborough. And you'll see there's two strands. So you have the lower strand that talks about word recognition. So that's your basic phonological awareness. It's decoding. It's sight recognition. And then we also have our language comprehension, and that's that upper strand. That's our building background knowledge, knowledge, rich vocabulary, language structures. So you'll see that at that bottom level, you have those kind of early literacy skills that are starting to get woven together as students become more proficient and automatic and fluent. And then in conjunction, you need to have that language comprehension, right? So students also need to have sufficient background knowledge interwoven with that vocabulary, verbal reasoning, and that both of those strands also weave together to produce a skilled reader. And that you really need to have structured literacy, again, explicit instruction, to have that product of a skilled reader. And structured literacy shows that we need to have both. So an individual could be a very strong decoder, but so they can get those words off the page, but if they don't have the sufficient background knowledge or the rich vocabulary that's related to the content, then they're not going to comprehend what they're reading. And then vice versa, right? So if a student has really great background knowledge on a subject and has that rich vocabulary, but they can't decode, they also are not going to have text comprehension. So you really need to have both. Next slide. So structured literacy, I talked a little bit about that. The research is showing through the science of reading that structured literacy is really the best approach to teaching reading. And structured literacy needs to be explicit, systematic, and cumulative, and it needs to integrate listening, speaking, and reading and writing. It also includes those components I talked about with Scarborough's rope. You'll see them listed there and defined. So the National Reading Panel often refers to these as the 5 pillars of reading. And again, you have to have all of these in order to be a skilled reader. So where are we now? I will say, just as in my second year of being the K-12 department chair, our department is super proud of where we are at this point. As Sheena mentioned, we started back in 2019. You'll see we have at the K-2 level, we have the Zaner Blozer's Super Kids program. You'll see how that aligns to the science of reading. In 3 through 5, we have spelling connections. That's also in alignment with the science of reading. And then it says K-5, but it actually is K-12. Our interventionists have all been trained through the Institute of Multisensory Education that supports an Orton-Gillingham approach. If you've heard that term before, it actually was developed by 2 individuals. So we had Dr. Samuel Orton. He was a neuropsychologist, super interested in language processing disorders, and became very interested in how to help those individuals. And then in conjunction, he started working with a teacher and psychologist, Dr. Anna Gillingham, and she was one of the first teachers who started using the multisensory approach and saw the benefits of that. So the 2 of them developed that and started this approach, and we're now using the Institute of Multisensory Education, or IMSE or IMSE. So we're very proud of that. And just to add that it's really important to know that this program, the one I mentioned last, is not only helpful for students that have dyslexia, but it's also really helpful and beneficial for all students. So we're in a good place. Sheena's going to talk a little bit about where we're headed next. We really are working more on refining and improving our practices.
So proud of where we've been, but really focused on where we need to go next and how we can improve. So our K-5 Humanities Committee this year, our focus is on spelling. So from the research, we know if a student can spell a word, they can read it. So we're really focused on the spell to read approach. We have 2 texts that the committee is anchoring into. The first one is Phonics and Spelling through Phoneme Grapheme Mapping, and that's by Catherine S. Grace. And the other one is Uncovering the Logic of English, which really outlines there are logical rules that we can apply to the English language. It is not as illogical as we think it is. So those 2 texts are guiding our work, and then we're developing differentiated resources, and ultimately would like to develop a scope and sequence that aligns to our K-2 programming, that is Super Kids, and then our 3-5 spelling programming, that is Spelling Connections, because we've heard feedback from teachers, while these programs are great, they feel like we could do more to differentiate our spelling instruction. We've also been focused on writing for a number of years. After COVID, this came out of the Humanities Committee. Teachers felt like this was an area of weakness in getting students to write and really writing in the content areas. So we know that having a standalone writing block is actually not the best instructional approach to writing. We want to embed it within the content. And so we're actually conducting this pilot this year as a book study. We are using the book The Writing Revolution by Natalie Wexler and Judith Hochman. Natalie Wexler's name has become quite popular because she also wrote the book The Knowledge Gap. And so she's a huge proponent of building background knowledge and not knowledge building. We shouldn't be teaching kids ELA skills in an isolated standalone block of time, but rather building that background knowledge so they can access text, right, and comprehend text. So this is the work also of our writing pilot, and the goal is to take those foundational writing skills that really start at the sentence level with this book. So if we expect students to write multi-paragraph essays by 5th grade and beyond, how are we scaffolding that, right? And this book is big on starting at the sentence level and then moving beyond that. So that work will impact curriculum writing this summer for 3, 4, 5. And then we're just continuing to dig in to the science of reading. We need to continue to train teachers, and that is our plan. So K-5 literacy specialists will continue to be IMSE trained, but they will attend morphology training. So morphology training is really just the study of words. And their suffixes, their prefixes. So that's really important because we've also heard from teachers that we need more support in the realm of comprehension and vocabulary. Special educators and ENL teachers will also attend this training, so we're really trying to build capacity. So what our literacy specialists are delivering in their RTI block, our special educators and our ENL providers are also doing the same. So we're aligned, and this is especially helpful when we look at data. We're all talking about the same thing. Phoneme, grapheme, mapping, and syllable types. This professional learning is being offered after school by our wonderful humanities Tosa Kendrick Flaherty. So she started this training. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. She's actually had to add some follow-up trainings because teachers want more. Both Kate and Kendrick have been going into classrooms and coaching as well. So that's been hugely beneficial for our teachers and positive feedback there. And then we're continuing to transition to IMSC Orton-Gillingham 4, 6, 12. So, we're doing a lot with K-5. That is the foundation. We feel like we really need to build consistent practices there first, but we are focused on 6, 12 too. Those reading teachers, 6, 8, and at the high school have been trained in Orton-Gillingham, but we're really just trying to figure out ways to support our secondary teachers in making this program more developmentally appropriate. So those are our next steps with our Bay Trail and high school staff. And then I'll leave you with this quote. We thought this quote was perfect for sort of what we shared with you today. When a child memorizes 10 words, they can only read 10 words. If a child learns the sound of 10 letters, they'll be able to read 350 sound words, 4,324 sound words, and 21,655 sound words. Thank you. We'll be happy
so
to
much.
answer any questions that you have.
Board members, questions?
So many.
You want to start? Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Trying to
Go ahead.
look and see.
Go ahead.
Well, and thank you. It's, I enjoy listening to hearing about this because, we take for granted too much that your teacher just goes in and, here's the book, kind of goes through it very mechanically, when a lot of this is, there is a lot of, as you say, science. There's a lot of work that goes behind this, a lot of theory that goes on behind this, and theory and facts. So I appreciate you giving those, and I especially like the illustrations. I mean, that really brought it home for me. You mentioned that the state requires us to be certified, and I assume they have some kind of body of knowledge that we're supposed to be able to deliver, and how do we provide that certification?
So from the article that I read about Governor Hochul and her proposal, it sounds like there will be some sort of certification form that we will need to fill out, and we'll just need to prove that we're in alignment from a curricular standpoint, a professional learning standpoint, programmatically, with the science of reading and best practices related to that. We feel pretty confident that we are doing that currently, but we can always improve. And actually, we are attending a professional learning session tomorrow on the literacy briefs that were just published by New York State. And I'm sure more information will come about Governor Hochul and her proposed legislation, but it'll be literacy specialists and administrators around the county attending.
Well,
And that's someone from New York, from the state
State ed.
education department that's coming out, right?
And knowing how things go, when it's, you point out that it's just a new proposal. Knowing how things go, generally we'll be required to certify about 6 months before the standards come out. Yeah. So the other question, we've been working on the science of reading, you said, I forget when, 19,
2019.
but quite a while, is, and again, now that this proposal just come out, maybe it's premature, how much curriculum work will curriculum development work will be needed to align with this, or are we already mostly there?
I'll let Kate answer this question because she's done fabulous work with the literacy department related to curriculum.
So I think we're pretty much there. The fact that we have our teachers' letters trained was really building that foundation, and we offer that to any new teachers as well. In terms of the literacy department, just having that, the training in the IMSC or in Gillingham approach is huge. In the past, we've done kind of a menu of options for our interventionists, and now we're really trying to work towards cohesion and consistency. So that's a huge win for us as well. I think it's really going to be about just refining that practice and continuing to stay up to date. But we are really ahead of some other districts in terms of where we're at with alignment. So I think we're in a great place.
Our literacy specialists have essentially developed a curriculum for alignment with our K-2 core programming and then also our basically K-5 interventions for Tier 3. So we, for the first time ever maybe, we've actually developed a curriculum for our literacy specialists to follow a coherent scope and sequence because we're no longer using different programs and bits and pieces from this program and another program. For the first time, we've all been trained together, and we're really following a common language, a common program, so we've been able to build a coherent curriculum, which is amazing because we come together, department meetings, common planning meetings, and we're all aligned and have the same goals. And data meetings have also, I think, because of this, been streamlined, and the data that we're looking at just, I think it's a more accurate picture now of what a student truly knows and is able to do because we're streamlining these interventions in our curriculum.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I have a couple comments. Yeah. Thank you so much for your presentation. As always, wow, who would have thought that reading was a science, right? Yeah. And then we get on our kids when they want to go to college to get an English literature degree, right? Or something like that. Anyway, but a couple comments, and I'm so glad to have heard you talk about our special educators and the ENL teachers, because I was wondering how they fit into this. And I'm glad that they are getting the same things. And those kiddos will get the same thing as well, same kind of top-notch treatment and education. Also, I know that sometimes teachers are very, very smart, okay, and learning all of this knowledge, and sometimes it's difficult to impart the knowledge. And I appreciate you going into the classroom and coaching teachers and having them, because sometimes even, you learn something, but then you're not too sure about how to impart it. And, kids are like some of the most judgmental demographic I've ever met in my life. So if you get up there and you don't know what you're doing, right, or they see any sliver of fear or doubt in you, right, they'll take you down. So I appreciate the coaching part so that our teachers are able to learn about imparting their knowledge and, what works, what doesn't work, and, being flexible with it. So I really, I appreciate that piece very, very much. There was one other thing I wanted to comment on, but I forget. So we're good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Krista.
I just have a couple of comments and then a question. First of all, thank you. I love the whole science of reading thing, and I love that you said two things, equity and access, because it's all about making sure we're meeting all kids, and I really think when we do this, that's exactly what we're doing, because we're hitting all those 5 components of reading. And also, I love that you said it wasn't new, because that was driving me crazy when everyone's like, oh, the new science of reading. I'm like, this has been around forever. We're just naming it something different. We're finally naming it. So I love that. And I love that you talked about phoneme grapheme mapping, because I think it's such a great instructional tool to really align the phonics and the phonemic awareness, and also just the letters and sounds for kids. I think it really helps kids really learn how to spell and make that connection between the letters and the print. And I love the syllable types. I'm all about syllable types, because I think that piece really transfers lifelong. Like, it really helps when you get into those multisyllabic words. So I think all the tools that we're using are really great tools that I think our kids are definitely benefiting from. I just had one question. You mentioned that, like, we had common curriculum with our interventionists. So are all kids, when you say that, does the curriculum, are the kids receiving the same type of instruction regardless of who their interventionist, or is that adjusted based on the kids' needs?
So we're all interventionists are using from the Institute of Multisensory Education, we call it IMSE. So they're using the same resource, right?
Okay.
So within Tier 3, all students should be getting that multisensory approach.
Okay.
Their needs obviously are different, but they're going to be getting that same approach, that same scope and sequence, right? If we need to transfer kids in and out of tiers or between providers now, we're speaking the common language, right? In the past, we would have had, not that they were not beneficial programs, but we may have had a multitude of programs to choose from, and if we needed to choose, we need to switch a tier or a provider, the scope and sequence wouldn't match. So really just having that cohesion and alignment has really helped. And then in our Tier 2, the curriculum, again, as Gina had mentioned, we've done a ton of work. We have a team of literacy specialists that are working together to align our kind of approach. So we're taking that Orton Gillingham approach, and we are kind of modifying it and trying to include it in with Super Kids. So in K1 and 2, literacy specialists are pushing into classrooms, and they are using the scope and sequence of Super Kids, but with the methodology and approach with that multisensory for that Tier 2 support. So again, it's common, so you could go into any classroom during Tier 2 and you would see an interventionist that is doing the same plans with those students, but those students, again, Tier 2 would have similar needs, right? They're the students that might need just a little bit of supplemental support. Then we have our Tier 3 that really need that something a little bit different, right? With that clear multisensory explicit instruction at their level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the common language is helpful, especially for our kiddos that struggle. So if
Definitely.
they go from one teacher to another, we're not causing more confusion for them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for coming. It was great to just hear all of the work that's been done, especially since, we started 2019. I think it's great to hear, just like Kristen said, equity and access, and knowing that all of these things are being embedded in our curriculum, right? As we review curriculum or as we design curriculum, because it's not just a standalone, but it's in everything that we do. And I think that's important, for the community to hear that it's something that we're doing. It's not an extra thing. It's something that, we're working through as we plan these things. So I think that's great to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just add that there are times I have to meet with the Monroe County superintendents on a regular basis, and there's lots of bragging rights that I have, and one is last Friday. It's after the governor put out the new information about science for reading. There were some districts at the table, I won't name any, who was like, how do we start this? Where do we go? And I was able to sort of kick back and sip my coffee and be like, we've been doing this since 2019. I don't know why this is a big deal. But it's also kudos, and you guys did a nice job also really building up our teachers, because for a new teacher, this is fine. You're going to learn it, and this is what you're doing. For teachers who've been teaching a long time, this is a change. And there were some growing pains that you guys did a really nice job, sort of not, all the nights of crying and things like that. But it is a change, but I love the fact that it's, again, tied to sort of the the science behind it, the MRIs you talked about. I love that concept that reading is man-made. You know, it's not a natural piece. And I come at it here, everything I come at is always with the dad hat on, but I've got a 5-year-old in kindergarten in our district learning how to read, and it's frustrating. And since my other kids are 10 years older than that, I have forgotten how frustrating it can be, but it's hard, you know, but so with that, with Super Kids, it's amazing that, you know, coming home and loving to read, even though he's not there yet, it's really great. So I'm fully in. I've drank the science of reading Kool-Aid, and I really appreciate all that you're doing and our educators are doing as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You are more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the board meeting, but if you quietly walk out because you want to get home, we understand. Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes special reports.
Okay, we'll go to 4A, student and staff report, or student honors.
So
Staff.
because we, this is students, right?
Yes.
Or student rep. I can do the student rep.
Oh, okay.
So Helen, our amazing student rep, is not here. As the board knows, and anybody watching at home, we did cancel after-school activities, especially after Adam Bello, our county executive, put out a statement around being cautious. I don't know what it's like out right now, but when I drove here, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but, you know, it changes. So because of that, we called Helen and said, you can stay home, because, you know, every other student is no activities, but you have to come to the board meeting. So I hope that's okay. But because our board rep is amazing, she has already sent us her report, and I will not do it justice because she does a great job, but I will at least share PHS. 6 high school students were selected to have their art featured in an exhibit at RIT. 2 student athletes in cross country received honorable mention and recognition for all Greater Rochester honors. The elective fair helps students, especially 9th graders, learn about all the course electives offered at the high school. And Penfield's Nordic team has started practices at Bristol. And the upstairs hallways here at PHS got an upgrade thanks to our painting crew. Bay Trail updates. The 6th graders won the December Ticket Drop Tuesday. Soon they'll get to see an administrator lip sync to a song of their choice. We will have to put that on social media. Pen Prints, the school literary magazine, is opening an eclipse-themed contest. Students can submit stories, poems, and drawings that relate to the upcoming eclipse. Scribner, on January 17th, it's their beginners concert. At Cobbles on Tuesday the 16th, it's their beginners concert, and students also celebrated World Braille Day last Thursday with egg carton crafts. They actually have an amazing, at Cobbles, they have an amazing bulletin board that's Braille that you can touch and read, which is really amazing. Indian Landing, their drama club, is putting on its 2024 production on Friday and Saturday, and their beginning concert is January 16th. And Harris Hill, their beginners concert is January 17th, and the Harris Hill PTA has partnered with Bravo Creative Arts to give students the opportunity to participate in Annie Jr. Musical Theater Workshop. So again, I apologize to Helen that my presentation wasn't nearly as exciting as she makes it, but thank you for sending that in.
Okay, superintendent report.
All right. So this evening, I have just a couple of student staff updates, and then we'll turn it over to Dr. Driffill for business updates. Congratulations to PHS athletes who received all Greater Rochester first team honors for the fall season. Their pictures and names are there, and that was the only thing I ever can win with Helen is that I get photos. So congratulations to those students. And she also referenced her RIT art show, so congratulations to the students whose artwork will be featured in the Start Here High School, Middle School art exhibit at RIT from January 19th through February 3rd. And congratulations to those students. And if you get an opportunity to get out to RIT, they do this typically annually, and the kids who are there, the artwork is absolutely amazing. So please find a way to stop by if you can. The only update I have is that we are, believe it or not, it's January, and we are beginning conversations about the 25 school calendar. And so how that works is there's a Monroe County group that is made up of all public school, representatives from private school, representative from unions, and representative from the Rochester Diocese. And we try to create a calendar that's the recommended calendar for Monroe County. Every school has the ability to shift the calendar and make it how they want, but we really like to have consistency with February break, April break, December break. Those are the big ones because if BOCES is not open on those days, our students who attend BOCES, there is no program. And so we really try to stay as close as we can. So the hope is that at the next board meeting, I will be bringing a calendar to the board for review for approval in February. But this is really important because right around now is when we start getting calls from the community because they want to plan their vacations or getaways. And so hang tight and we will get that calendar out for review at the next board meeting. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Driffill.
Good evening, board. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Sound great, Dr. Driffill.
Recovering from laryngitis, so if my voice fails me, please forgive me. I have a handful of items that require board approval tonight. The first of which are capital project change orders. There are two of them. One is larger. It was revolving around the sewer connection underneath Plank Road. The town of Penfield requested a couple modifications to the design, so we had to comply with those. We have approval of the 24-25 budget goals, guidelines, and factors that we reviewed at our last meeting. There have been no changes to that document since then. I'll discuss both of our extra class audit and required corrective action plan and the single audit in a moment. And then we also have the RIT service contract for graduation. Just like last year, because the cost is over $20,000 for graduation for services at RIT, we require board approval. So for the two most recent audits that we've had, these are both done annually. The first extra class is our extracurricular clubs. As a reminder, all of our extracurricular clubs are student-run and there are staff advisors. They operate under our umbrella, but for purposes of their educational autonomy, they're really kind of run on their own. So they're responsible for sales tax, they're responsible for their meeting minutes, banking records, things like that. So there were two prior year recommendations on the 21-22 audit that were fixed, but there was a new recommendation and prior year instances requiring corrective action. The three items that were cited were failure to complete a profit and loss statement for a fundraiser for one of the clubs, timely deposits of funds, and this was due to a staff absence. The requirement is to get all cash deposited within 24 hours or as soon as possible, but because people were out, it took longer than that. And then one of the clubs didn't have meeting minutes reflecting some of their activity. As long as I've been in school business, there's always findings in the extracurricular audits. There's certainly nothing nefarious or anything in terms of fraud, waste, or anything like that. It's just the education of the kids, and then sometimes the advisors change. So we do annual trainings for all the advisors and kids, and we try to provide resources, but they're busy and they're in different clubs and they're scattered around. So we understand. So we do have corrective action in your board as well for those three recommendations. The other thing I want to note that's in the report is that every year the auditor always points out financially inactive clubs. So it doesn't mean that these clubs weren't active. It just means they didn't have any financial activity. They didn't do any fundraisers or anything that cost any money. The other audit in the packet this evening is the single audit, so that's the federal audit. This is a requirement for any district that receives, I think it's more than $750,000 in federal funds. Last year, between the IDEA and the title grants and the stimulus funds, we were a little over $4 million. So this is something we have to do. The focus of review this year was special education and those stimulus funds, going back to the pandemic dollars. We were deemed a low-risk auditee, and there were no recommendations in the single audit report. So that is it for me, unless there's any further discussion.
Board members, questions, comments? No?
Can we just make Dr. Driffill talk longer? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just point out, and Dr. Driffill did, is you're going to see that extracurricular club comment many times. We talked about that in audit committee. It comes up a lot because it is student-run clubs. And so that's, once we get someone really trained and ready to go, they graduate, and then we got to start again. So it's not a knock at all for those student clubs and all the work that they do. That concludes superintendent reports.
Okay. No public comment. So we are on 6A, change orders. Can I please have a motion and a second that the change orders as described above be approved?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I please have a motion and a second that the 2024-2025 budget goals, guidelines, and factors be approved as presented on December 12th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education accepts the extra classroom activities financial report, say that 3 times fast, for the year ending June 30th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education accepts the single audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Whereas the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District desires to enter into a facility use and service contract with the Rochester Institute of Technology for the purposes of securing and provision of the venue facilities and services for the Penfield High School graduation ceremony to be held on June 25th, 2024, a copy of which is attached hereto as Exhibit A. Can I have resolved, that the Penfield Central School District hereby enters into the facility use and service contract with the Rochester Institute of Technology on the terms and conditions set forth in the facility use and service contract attached, and it is further resolved that the President of the Board of Education is hereby authorized to execute the facility use and service contract attached hereto as Exhibit A, and it is further resolved, this resolution shall take effect immediately. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Oh, jeez, that was a lot. All in favor, none opposed? It's like a tongue twister. Okay, we are on Monroe County committee meetings. We have legislative committee. She couldn't go, remember? Was it no? She texted us. She couldn't remember, but I thought it was someone else. Okay. All right.
Remember, she didn't get to go.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
can
I'm
tell you,
sorry.
the legislative committee worked on, I think, the Albany trip in terms of areas to advocate for, so.
Okay, district committee, audit committee.
Dan stole
Dan.
our thunder. I'm sorry. Like, we don't really have anything to add other than what Dan already presented on. So, yeah, he stole the show. I'm sorry.
Okay, health and
Nothing.
safety.
Yes, I was able to go to that one.
Okay.
Let's see, I noted a few things. The first one was that there are 5 new committee members. So I guess 29 people applied to be on the committee and 5 were chosen. And I was impressed with the fact that these are public health experts and engineers and MDs and PhDs and people who know about health and safety.
Great, yeah.
Good.
Unlike me. So that was great. The school nurse reported lots of sickness, respiratory stuff, viruses. And when we went around the round table, I asked, okay, so why are Bay Trail students allowed in shorts in 25 degrees? So Dr. Snyder said he would think about that. Can't be good. Kids are dumb. No, sorry, I didn't mean that.
Interesting choices.
Yeah. Let's see, Brandon talked about a new lockdown procedure, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, if I say this wrong, but he referenced buttons in each building that lock buildings and wings instantly, and also said that there's an app that most teachers have which allow them to communicate any emergencies to one another. So if there's an emergency in one wing, they could communicate through the app to teachers in another wing. So there was talk about various inspections and trainings, like for CPR. And the food service director talked about the problem of not having drills during lunchtime. So that basically you've got tons of kids in a cafeteria and none of the staff members know what to do if there's a genuine emergency. So that needs to be figured out. Yeah.
I know that we have, and I know we have Brandon here on the sidelines, but we have done those over the years, but it's probably a good idea in terms of doing our drills outside of a typical time. So those lunch periods are great. Same with right when school starts, right before school ends. It's all those times. So it's a great point. I'm glad I saw that from the minutes of health and safety, and something we can continue to work on.
And lunch staff, people in the kitchen also knowing, okay, do I always turn off the oven when there's a drill?
Yep.
Do I leave it on if it's not a true emergency? Like, just, I think she was suggesting that they're not sure.
Yeah, it's a great
this point what to do. So
Are we not required? I thought we were required to do drills during lunch recess times. I thought we had to do one a year.
I have a phone a friend on the side, so the answer is no. There
Oh,
is
we're
no,
not?
just a
I thought we
requirement
had
of how
to do-
many we have to have. An individual district
Districts
might
might
have
have
like
their own requirements.
protocol. I know we've done it at Cobbles before and at the high school, and I'm sure other places. But it's time to. It's a good point, especially when you talk about not just where do the kids go, but it's also like, do they turn off the stove? Do they turn off the equipment? Or do they, if they know it's a drill and they're going to be back in 10 minutes, do you not? So those are all those are great questions, and working through that to make sure, we have a lot of new folks in our cafeterias since pre-COVID, when we were doing lots of things differently. So I think it's great feedback, and I have no doubt that Mr. Fox will make sure that we're up to speed with that.
Okay, any unfinished business? Any new business? Mark?
I just wanted to mention, as you were talking, and if you said it, I missed it when
Yeah.
you said it, but the legislative breakfast is Saturday, February 3rd. So that's coming up very quickly.
Yeah, I haven't seen, is there an RSVP out for that
I
yet?
have not seen
I
it.
don't
I
think
just had to
so,
look
yeah.
at their calendar because I
Yeah.
did not see anything yet.
When is it again?
February 3rd.
Saturday, February 3rd.
And did you notice a location this year?
Does it say? Let's see if it says. Shadow Lake. Oh,
Shadow
well,
Lake here in
that's
Penfield,
great.
so very convenient. Yep.
wasn't there last year?
No, we
No,
were at,
We were-
RIT Convention Center typically, I think. Was it?
no,
Or were
we're
we-
at the, on.
Doubletree, isn't it?
Doubletree,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
That was, remember
was
last year was a no, here of no
freezing.
heat?
We
Yeah.
had no heat. It was like, it felt like it was 20 in that room. It was, we were all in jackets meeting. It was very cold.
Yeah.
It was.
I think maybe I couldn't go last
I-
year.
Liam
Okay.
got sick.
That's right.
that morning.
Yep. So
Yep.
this year I'll be there.
Because he texted
Excited.
us saying, can you please apologize to Amy? Liam woke up really sick.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
And then somebody else's child,
Let's not talk about being
Woke up
sick in my
sick.
house. It's very, we're going to keep this. We're going to keep positive energy.
one of the representatives, children also woke up sick.
It's not going around.
It's that time of the year.
Okay, any new business or any other new business or unfinished business? Okay. Can I have a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned at 7:33 PM?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed?